Okay, well, welcome back to Your Mother Ate My Dog, the podcast, episode 17, I believe.
Wow.
The movie this week, Death Becomes Her, 1992, kind of a sci-fi fantasy, like I don't know what you'd actually call it,
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi fantasy movie starring Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, and Goldie Hawn. What a wonderful choice by you. What did you think about this movie that you watched for the first time just recently?
Well, I got to say, it was overall, it was enjoyable. It was quite funny at times. I would add that this was a comedy. And it was like a little over the top, but in like a fun way. It was just a fun movie, I thought. What about you? What did you think?
It wasn't too much over the top. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
the whole thing wasn't Meryl Streep walking backwards with her head the wrong way.
right.
It was selective, which I really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
It gave the movie more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a purpose, but like more seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't just a joke of a film.
Right.
Um, it was a Robert Zemeckis film.
Yeah, I noticed that.
He's known for Back to the Future, as well as Forrest Gump,
Mm-hmm.
among other things. I'm actually sure.
I was quite pleased when I saw his name in the credits because I didn't know that he had directed it. And I said, well, Robert Zemeckis is probably going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of when I finished watching the movie is that, wow, finally a movie that Jesse and Josh, the hosts of the podcast, will agree on and enjoy together.
Well, it's sounding like it's going that way, doesn't it? Already.
Yeah, I think safe to say that it was an enjoyable movie that we both enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I'd be surprised if you didn't enjoy it because it was an enjoyable experience.
Totally.
Did you know there's a lot of trivia for this movie?
Oh.
I spent a lot of time going through it,
Mm-hmm.
and Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well. Robert Zemeckis.
Oh, okay.
This movie won an Oscar-winning film.
What did it win an Oscar for?
Take a guess.
Maybe. No, it won't be the score. Makeup, maybe? Special effects?
Close. Best visual effects.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It won an Oscar, beating Alien 3 and Batman Returns.
Hmm.
It also won a BAFTA for best visual effects. That's the British Oscar.
Yeah.
Beating Alien 3, Batman Returns, and Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, cool. I must say, as a quick note about that, I was discussing the podcast with my partner's parents. And I said, And I said, well, we're going to be watching Death Becomes Her. And they go, oh, well, that is a good movie, but the effects don't really hold up. You'll think it's really cheesy. And so what that did was kind of give me this expectation that it was going to look really terrible. But when I got to it, I thought the effects were quite good, personally. Do you agree with that?
They did look pretty cheesy. Like if we're so used to, this movie was 30 years ago. It came out.
Yeah.
So we're used to a certain standard. But apparently for 1992, it was the great thing to come out, visual effects wise. So,
I can see that for sure.
When I saw the Oscar for best visual effects, it made me think, okay, well, then clearly this was the best of the time, best visual effects. So it kind of gave me I appreciated it more because it must have been pretty good for 92.
Right. And I think it was. I mean, I was quite impressed personally, especially given that sort of precursor that supposedly the effects were going to not hold up very well, but I thought they did, considering the film's age.
Oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you didn't like about the movie?
I would say the pacing was a little odd, maybe. It was like, I don't know. I wish it had gotten to those moments with the effects maybe a bit sooner, but it's not like it took that long. It was a pretty short movie, like an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. So, I don't know. I don't have a ton that are glaring problems with this movie, I thought. What about you?
No, I Like I watched it pretty intently, but it wasn't a movie that I was too focused on finding holes for,
Right.
which is terrible for a podcast.
Well, honestly, they
I
just
was
weren't.
just
There was nothing there to jump out. Like there was really nothing. Some movies you watch and it's like, okay, wow, this is terrible. This part of this is bad. This just wasn't really happening. I found.
well, normally we pick apart the acting, but
Hmm.
Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, Goldie Hawn, and there were a few,
Isabella Rossellini, who I really like.
yeah, and then Sidney Pollack, who plays the ER doctor, I thought was really good as well. There was nothing wrong with the acting. I thought the acting was very strong.
Hmm.
Um, Meryl Streep said afterwards that it was kind of a nightmare being in a movie with so much special effects, and that she vowed to never be in a movie like this again. But she did enjoy her time.
Was it? She just wasn't used to that kind of thing. I guess she has. I don't really. That's a note that I want to bring up is that I've never really seen her in a movie like this.
No,
And the same is.
it was just
Go ahead.
hard for her, I think, because she had to stand in a certain
Mm,
place, put bags over her head,
right.
stuff like that. So it was just tough for such a good actress as Meryl is.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that was one of the highlights of this film was seeing some of these actors sort of step out of their comfort zone, I guess, or like out of the zone of what they normally do. I especially noticed that about Bruce Willis because I've seen him in so many like serious roles or like action roles, but here he was very silly and like over the top, and but he was actually quite good at that type of performance, I thought.
Yeah, used to playing manly men,
Yeah,
and this role as another Ernest, by the way, our second Ernest
second
film.
Ernest. Yeah,
Yeah, he played kind of a,
he was like
I don't know what to
he was
call
like a
him. Just a,
bumbling buffoon, and he just had no self confidence at all, and was it's kind of just like the opposite of what I've been used to with him.
yeah, he was great. He had hair, which is
He
nice to
had
see.
hair, yeah, and it was cool. Like, yeah, like I've seen the movies. I'm thinking that I've seen him, or I've seen like Looper and The Sixth Sense and Die Hard, which are and like the Expendables. He's like basically the same in all those. And then it sort of like gets closer to this performance in a movie like The Fifth Element, which I really love. That's like one of my favorite, probably my top 50 movies of all time. And he's more, I wouldn't say silly, but he's more comedic, I guess, or I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's more approaching the performance that he gave in this. And then
He was pretty funny in Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, yeah, yeah, like and that was another one I was thinking of too. Pulp Fiction, like, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like he always plays the same guy, but I like when he does something a little different, like The Fifth Element, and now this, and especially this because this is the one that is stands out the most from all the other performances I've seen. He's just being totally almost the opposite of what I've seen him in, and he did a very good job of it.
What year did The Fifth Element come out?
The Fifth Element probably came out either like probably in the early '90s, like probably pretty close to this. I can find out really quick.
Because Pulp Fiction was 94.
Oh yeah, '97 actually is when The Fifth Element came out. Yeah, and Meryl Streep as well. I've only ever seen her in serious things, or like I've seen her in the most like comedic thing I've seen her in is The Devil Wears Prada, I guess, which I love that movie too. But she gives a kind of like an outlandish performance in that movie, and it works. And I thought her performance in this worked as well. She was quite funny, and the same thing with Bruce Willis. The performances were quite funny.
And if Goldie Hawn is listening, Goldie Hawn, you did a great job as well.
Mm-hmm. And I really liked Isabella Rossellini's performance as well. There was a lot of like, I got the sense that the actors were having a lot of fun with it. Like especially Isabella, I thought she was. You could tell that she was really enjoying it, like doing something maybe that she's not normally used to. And Bruce Willis seemed like he was having some fun too. What's that?
We might have Robert Zemeckis to thank for that.
Why do we have Robert Zemeckis to thank?
Well, maybe he's just a guy who can bring these big and make them have a lot of fun in these silly roles.
Yeah, yeah. That might be something he was able to bring out of them. I don't know if like Zemeckis has done a lot of comedies. I guess The Back to the Future is a comedy.
Just some like some sci-fi time bending kind of things.
Yeah.
This film takes place over 51 years,
Mm-hmm.
1978, where it starts, to 2029, when Bruce Willis' character dies.
Yeah.
They have the funeral. Another thing about two things about Zemeckis that I'll give you is apparently on he would say the phrase "hold on to your butts,"
Hold on to your butts.
which was then used as a catchphrase for Samuel L. Jackson's character in Jurassic Park. Because I
Oh.
believe one of the writers for this movie was also worked on Jurassic Park, which
Oh.
came out the next year in
Yeah.
'93,
Mm-hmm.
and so they stole that from Zemeckis
Oh.
for Sam Jackson. And then the second thing is this is the second of three of his films to win Best Visual Effects at the Oscars. First one being Who Framed Roger Rabbit
Yeah.
in '88,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one being Forrest Gump in 1994.
When I think of special effects, I don't really think Forrest Gump all that much.
You should watch Forrest Gump then.
I've seen it like 10 times probably.
Well, he shakes the hand of John F. Kennedy,
Oh,
who
I
died.
see. Like those scenes where he's like put into these important historical moments or whatever.
Yeah,
I see.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then, I guess.
Wow. So much good for this movie. So little bad. Crazy.
Yeah, I will say, like, if I were to nitpick maybe on some performances or a performance, I would say maybe Goldie Hawn's character was probably the weakest. Her, like, when she was being trying to be like dramatic, like, I understand, like, this, I think I would characterize this film mostly as a comedy, like a fantasy comedy, I guess. Her attempts at comedy maybe fell a little flat a few times. It just felt like she was kind of being a bit cheesy, maybe. It just didn't quite work the way I was anticipating. I suppose. If that's just nitpicking though, like it wasn't like she had a bad performance. She had a lot of really great moments. But if there was any performance that maybe had a little bit of flaws, it would be hers.
Goldie, if you're listening, I thought you did a great job. The movie, according to Wikipedia,
Mhm.
is a satirical black comedy fantasy film.
Okay, I can see that.
Strong cult following,
Hmm.
especially among the LGBT community.
Oh, really?
Big for drag, apparently.
Oh, really? I wonder why that is.
I think it has to do with their end forms, um, just the way they kind of dressed
Oh,
towards the end of the film, and
okay.
then
I can also see that maybe with the whole set of like Isabella Rossellini's house, like all those butlers she had. Like I don't know, I can kind of see how that would sort of tie in that into that as well.
Fabio played one of her bodyguards.
Oh, really?
And then Deborah Jo Rupp, who you may know better as the mom from that '70s show, made a small appearance as one of the psychiatric patients at the beginning.
Oh,
You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
I don't know who you're talking about. Is that what you said? I know exactly who you're talking about. She
Okay,
was,
good.
yeah, she was also in WandaVision.
Yes, as is she the neighbor?
No, she's like Vision's boss's wife.
Right, right.
Yeah, I like her. I do remember like when Goldie Hawn's character was like sitting amongst all those people in like the psychiatric ward or whatever. Right before it cut to the next scene, I'm like, I saw somebody that I recognized, but I didn't go back. Yeah, but probably who I recognized.
100%.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
great.
I guess I'll just read off some more trivia I have.
Sure.
And then I don't know, you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
Speaking of Back to the Future,
Mm-hmm.
Helen makes a mention that she drinks the potion for the first time on October the 26th, 1985, which is the present date that Marty goes back in time in
Oh,
for Back, the first one.
so like a little Easter egg sort of thing.
a little Easter egg.
Mm-hmm.
This film was originally supposed to be a sequel to the film Tales from the Crypt
Yeah.
from 1972.
Mm-hmm.
When Meryl Streep and fighting with shovels, that iconic scene,
Yeah.
Meryl Streep accidentally hit Goldie Hawn in the face and scarred her cheek.
Oh, really? That reminds me though, actually, that scene when they were like, sword fighting, if you will, with the shovels. Like, I don't know if they did any like choreography for that scene, but it did not seem like they were really swinging at each other like with full anger. Like it felt very, I don't know. It wasn't very convincing. I remember thinking that when I was watching it.
Well, I mean, they're just like two girls who, sure, maybe they hated each other a little bit, but they didn't have any history throwing shovels at each other,
That's true.
picking up shovels and swinging
That's
them.
true. That's true.
Okay, well, good. That was a good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Death becomes her. Do you want to get to what you and I decided on score
Yeah,
wise
let's
for
do it.
this movie?
Let's do it.
Josh and Jesse watched a movie. Now they're going to score that movie out of 10. Out of 10. 10. So again, we have scrapped originality. Don't even talk about it.
Yep, forget it.
Very original film, I thought. Would have been a big score for
It could have
originality. But
been.
how did you feel about the ending?
The ending was actually I liked the ending. Yeah, there was something about it. I liked how it sort of took that big old gap to the end and showed Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn's characters like completely disheveled and falling apart. And I think it was fitting, like them falling down the stairs and just kind of like exploding into body parts. I thought it was funny, but it fit the tone of how the ending of the film was going. So I kind of liked it, and so I gave it a 7.5 for that.
Would you consider the funeral on to be the ending, or would you consider like the final scene where they're chasing Bruce Willis and he gets away?
I
As
consider
the
I considered like the funeral as the ending. Funeral on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I also gave it a 7.5,
Oh.
but I included the fun chase scene.
Oh, okay.
Eventually ends with Bruce escaping in a vintage Porsche, which apparently was James Dean's vintage Porsche.
Well, we
Never,
saw. I mean that's fitting because James Dean, you could see somebody who was portraying him. I don't know if you noticed that.
yeah, James Dean, Elvis Presley, Jim Morrison. There were a few people,
Yeah.
apparently.
Oh, so that's cool. Like I noticed that it was like James Dean, and then he drove away in his car. I didn't realize that was actually his car.
Yeah, like that was the guy who then turned around and was like,
Yeah.
um, there was also an alternate ending, apparently,
Okay.
that had Bruce Willis faking his own death to evade Helen and Madeline, who are Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep's characters,
Yeah.
where he runs off with a bartender.
Oh.
But Zemeckis thought that it was too happy of an ending,
Right.
and then rewrote it and went with them shattering at the after falling downstairs. Falling downstairs, quite a theme in this movie.
Yeah, and like really extended. Like when Meryl Streep first fell down the stairs, like she was just like falling forever.
Yeah, those stairs weren't very long.
Yeah.
She fell a few different times.
Yeah.
So yes, 7.5. I thought it was a pretty good way to wrap it all up.
Yeah, it fit the tone of where the film was going pretty well.
Expectation, I gave a 5.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of hype around this film because normally my girlfriend does not like watching the movies that we choose
Yeah.
with me, but she was very excited. So I'm like, oh, this must be a good movie. And it met those expectations for me, I thought. So I kind of middle for a 5.
Okay.
It didn't exceed. It wasn't like the greatest movie. I just thought it was going to be a good movie, and it was a good time. So I gave it a 5.
Okay, cool. Yeah, for me, like I didn't have any expectations, but then when I had that brief conversation with my girlfriend's parents and they mentioned like the special effects, I brought my expectations down. And then yeah, I was quite impressed with the effects, and it was a great deal funnier than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, it was just kind of enjoyable overall. So My expectation scores is higher than yours. I had it at an 8, just because it did exceed my expectations. 'Cause I kept them pretty low.
This movie got a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Hmm.
and Siskel and Ebert gave it a thumbs down.
Oh, really?
They were not happy with the movie.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they could, what they would give it now.
Well, they're
I
dead.
know
So,
exactly.
um, what about acting? I know we talked about it a little bit.
Hmm.
We talked about it quite a bit, but what was your score for acting?
My acting score is also pretty solid, just because it was nice seeing, especially Meryl Streep and Bruce Willis, sort of step out of their wheelhouse, but do it so successfully. Quite funny and just very interesting to see them do something else. And so, and then, but there was a like if you just focus on like the performances of everyone that wasn't like who I'm calling the main four, so the two I just mentioned, Goldie Hawn and then Isabella Rossellini, those performances weren't quite as solid. But I mean, you're getting out of the sort of the big ticket actors and sort of lesser known people, so maybe that's to be expected. So it brought down my score a little bit, but also, I mean, there were such good performances that the score is staying pretty high. So I had it at a 7.5 as well.
Okay. I give it an 8.5,
Okay.
8.5.
Mm-hmm.
Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis, Goldie Hawn, Isabella Rossellini, Sidney Pollock in. I thought he was great as that ER doctor who first came to the conclusion that Meryl Streep is dead,
Right.
and then I think he ends up dying.
Yeah, he had like a heart attack. Yeah,
Yeah,
that whole scene in the hospital was quite good. It was funny.
like the bodyguards of Isabella
Mm-hmm.
Rossellini. I mean, they weren't great, but it was fine.
Yeah.
8.5. I think the main four, like you said, carried it.
Yeah.
My score wouldn't be any higher if everybody else was better. So
Mm-hmm.
8.5.
Okay. Cool.
Now score out of 10.
Yeah, you give me your score first.
Okay, this movie was almost the perfect amount of silly and campy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like we said before, it wasn't the whole movie, but like select parts sprinkled in, which included satire and kind of a weird oddity, which made it a fun watch.
Yeah.
So I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my score is quite similar to that actually.
Is
Uh,
it 8 out of 10?
It's not 8.5, 8 out of 10, but it's close.
Is it 8.5 out of 10?
No, it's
Sorry, continue. Oh,
7.5 out of 10 actually. Yeah, the really enjoyable performances and the special effects were cool. I guess it's I'm trying to think of stopping this from being even higher. Like, why isn't it a 10 movie? I guess
I can tell
there was a little bit of cheesy moments, and the pacing was a little odd. Like, it's not like the pacing was bad, but it just felt like it taking a little bit to get into what I would call the good parts. Because the first half an hour, there was a lot of like kind of like just felt like kind of weird and not so much super enjoyable. And then it started to get really funny and interesting. So I think that's maybe what hurts it the most, and that's why I'm at a 7.5.
now when you looked at our scores in the past
Mm-hmm.
uh, 15 or so episodes, was it you that had given higher scores, or was it me that gave higher scores?
You give higher scores far more often than I do. Out of the 15, I think you had given like 11 higher. 11 of them were higher by you.
Okay, so that just continues.
Yep.
um I mean, okay. Death Becomes Her, that was a great choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I already have a bunch of ideas for my next movie. I think I know I'm going to pick, but what about you? Have you decided for your next choice?
I've gone back and forth. uh, I mentioned a movie to you that I was going to choose, but then I thought of a different movie, so I think I'm going to go with that one and then save the other one for the future.
That's the one you sent me a message kind of asking about if I had seen it.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
A movie that kind of gave me similar vibes this weekend. So I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do that one because this movie I wanted to see. I still haven't seen, and it'd be great for the podcast.
Hmm.
Great talking points, but I'm gonna save that, I think, and
Okay.
go with a different movie.
Yeah.
Have you seen or heard of the new Chippendales movie?
Like Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, so there's a new movie out. They kind of rebooted it, and the movie that I chose stars one of the two, Chip or Dale. I don't actually know which one.
And this is, I assume, animated, right?
It's the Chip and Dale movie is live action, but
Oh,
the Chip and the Dale and some other things are CGI'd. Like
interesting.
they're animated, but it's in like real life. It's like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of situation,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
but in
Yeah.
2022. So it's one of the two voices star of this movie that came out last year, I believe. It takes place in a warm climate and deals with death.
Okay. Is it somewhat newer or?
Yeah, it came out last year. It stars a guy who is in my favorite movie of all time. Say it because then I'll give it away.
Okay. Well, that's excited to watch it then.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. Maybe
Oh, all right.
I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm open to anything. I'm an easygoing guy, you could say.
Okay, well, did you have a good long weekend?
Yeah, it was all right. It flew by like nothing else. Like it just like kind of crazy. Did you feel the same way? Like, did you feel like the 3 days just kind of went by like nothing?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah,
You know,
but
back to work.
at least it's
So
only a 4 day week. That's not so bad.
yeah, it's not so bad. But then it's June, and then it's summer's over and back to school and stuff.
And
So
I'm turning 30. Oh,
that's depressing.
it really is. I couldn't even imagine to be 31.
Well, on that note, any pressing issues you want to let our 500 plus followers on Instagram know about?
I don't. I don't think so. No.
You didn't meet any new
Famous people?
famous musicians in a record store or a grocery store?
No, I can't say that I did. When I think of you bring up Instagram and then famous people, I've had some famous people like some of my Instagram things, like on my personal Instagram.
Okay, well, let us hear all about it. I'm excited.
Like this famous hip hop artist, his name's Curtis Blow. Have you heard of him? He's a sort of
No.
an old school hip hop, like in the late 70s sort of thing.
Oh, nope, still no.
Okay. Well, he liked one of my posts once. And Elijah Wood, he liked one of my posts
Never
one
heard
time.
of them.
Yeah, me neither. I actually don't know who that is.
Oh, that's Rachel Evan Wood's brother.
Yep, exactly. Now that's coming to me. But that's about it.
Westworld.
Westworld. Now, what about you? Any famous encounters that you'd like to let me know about?
No, none that comes to mind. I wasn't prepared for the question. I don't think so.
Well then,
I don't think so. No,
okay. Well, I'm glad I asked then. Clears that up.
nobody's famous as Curtis Blow.
Yeah, the one and only.
Did he have a backing band like Curtis Blow in the?
Blowfish?
Well, that's where I was gonna go, but that seemed like too easy.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, well,
Okay.
great. This has been a pretty concise.
Yeah, we really got right down to it this time, I think.
Well, thank you, Jesse, and thank you to all our 500 plus listeners. Most of you apparently live in either the United States of America, Switzerland, or India. So hello to you.
Hello.
Canada, not so much.
Well, we're not popular here in our own country. I think,
But
yeah,
one step at a time.
totally. We'll hit the local market soon enough.
Hey, bye.
Okay, see ya.
There's no easy way to end
Well,
these
there never
things.
is there? Why even end them? Just keep them going all the way for a whole entire week until the next episode comes out.
Like while we're sleeping and stuff.
Yeah, while we're sleeping. I wonder if that podcast exists. It's just a podcast, and it's just like the sound of somebody sleeping. I'm sure it does.